Hello, I'm back. It's been quite a while since I last posted a video. I think it's 3 weeks now. I just needed to take a break and I thought I would film this video to catch you up to speed with what has been going on in my life and also have a chat about survivorship because, as I mentioned, I think in my last video, survivorship can be pretty difficult and I feel like there's a lot of aspects of survivorship that we don't really talk about or that's not really normalized. So I thought I would have a very open and honest conversation about how I'm doing, how survivorship is, and what the next steps are for me. So yes, I took a couple weeks off. It was my birthday on the 27th of May and I turned 23. Thank you to everyone who did wish me a happy birthday. I did post a community post, and if you haven't seen that, make sure that you have your post notifications turned on. It's the little bell beside the subscribe button so you don't miss those kind of posts. But again, thank you to everyone who did wish me a happy birthday. It was a very laid back birthday, and to be quite honest, I wasn't really excited for my birthday, and I think it was just a combination of things. It's obviously my first birthday since being cancer-free, and I was just feeling a lot of emotions and feeling like this pressure to have things together, and I think I'm at the age now that I'm getting worried about getting older, but in reality, I should be happy about getting older. But I did have a very laid back birthday, and I also have another life update that I did promise in the last video and now I'm just getting to, but I did get a summer job. Now it's working for my brother. He has a refrigeration company, so I'm working in the office, and it started off as part-time hours and now I'm kind of doing in between part-time, full-time, which I'm feeling pretty comfortable with because I think if I were to jump into full-time, it would be really hard, especially since I just finished chemo in March and I'm still dealing with a lot of the physical effects of chemo, and also my platelets are still continuously low, so I'm still working on that. And I have my surgery coming up with my thyroid. If you want to learn about that, I'll leave the link to the video up here somewhere where I talk about having to have surgery on my thyroid. So those are like the major life updates right now, but I thought I would talk openly about what it's been like after cancer treatment. Right when I was finished with chemo, got the all clear, I felt this really heavy pressure to push forward, get into the next stage of my life, do something bigger and better, because I was comparing myself to other people my age. So I'm at the point in my life where there's supposed to be a lot of transition. So a lot of my friends, I was seeing them getting their dream jobs, getting really cool summer jobs, some of them making those next steps with significant others, some meeting their significant others, and I just felt like I was so behind. It felt like the last year of my life I was in a coma and I woke up and everybody moved on in the world and I was just stuck in treatment, and now I was a year behind. And that was a really uncomfortable feeling, and it was making me feel like I was behind and that I really needed to put that pressure on myself to do something bigger, something better, because I just survived cancer. That's a pretty big accomplishment. Now I need to move on to the next big accomplishment. And what I learned through struggling with this is that there are going to be opportunities in my life. There are going to be opportunities in your life if you're watching this and you are also a cancer survivor, or an illness has stopped you from progressing your life in the way that you think it should have been or the way that you wanted it to be. There are going to be opportunities in the future for you. It's just we have to be patient. And I lacked patience at this time. I was trying to find a job. I was applying to everywhere that I could, and I'm also starting school again in September. So I also felt this pressure to save money for school and get my brain back working so that I remember things that I have forgotten from my undergraduate degree, so that I can be prepared for medical school and yes, there was just a lot of pressure that I was putting on myself, unnecessary pressure. And another thing, I'm 23 years old. I don't have to have it all figured out. And at this time, I was also continuing through cognitive behavioral therapy, which I believe I started back in like January, February. It's a 16-week thing, and this week is actually my last session. And we were talking about all of these pressures that I'm putting on myself and feeling this sheer disappointment that I'm either not hearing from jobs, or that I feel like some of my friends are doing great things and I feel like I'm just sitting around wasting time. I really felt like I was wasting time. But she really made me realize, my psychiatrist, that I am on this completely different path than anyone else. And all of my friend group that I am thinking of have not been through all of the health struggles that I've been through, have not been through cancer, through chemo, through radiation. So I can't really compare myself to those other people because they haven't had the same experiences as me. And I have been handling all of this treatment, all of the other things that come with a cancer diagnosis extremely well. And I think that really put things into perspective. And once I got this job with my brother's company, I was able to just kind of sit back, relax, be okay with not having everything figured out right now. Another huge topic that I want to discuss, and I've wanted to discuss for a very long time, because I feel like a lot of cancer survivors, a lot of people with chronic illnesses can relate to this, but it's sometimes a hard thing to discuss. And that is friendships, relationships when it comes to dealing with illness. There's actually a TV show that really explains this well. It's called Parenthood, if anyone's seen that. And someone in the show gets diagnosed with cancer, and she's talking to a fellow cancer survivor, and she says that at the very beginning, when you're first diagnosed, everyone and their mother flocks to you. They are constantly asking how you're doing, checking in, and then at some point during your treatment or even after your treatment, people start to fade out. And it's really where you find out who are your true friends, who are the people that are going to be there for you no matter what. Going through cancer definitely taught me that, and I did lose quite a few friendships because those people just weren't able to be there for me, weren't able to show up in the way that I needed. Those friendships weren't meant to last, or relationships or whatever. So it's a completely normal thing to go through, but I think it's harder when you're going through something as life-altering and as scary as cancer and feeling like your whole entire life is falling apart, because I definitely have felt that. I definitely feel that now in some points, that I feel like my entire world is combusting and everyone in my life is changing, and a lot of things in my life are changing besides relationships, and it can be very scary to feel like you're alone in all of this change. And I also noticed as time went on, like I said, during treatment, as treatment progressed and beyond treatment, that a lot of people have stopped checking in, and I felt this intense feeling of loneliness. There's a whole bunch of different reasons as to why people do the things that they do, behave the way that they do, and yes, it could explain why some people weren't able to be there for you, weren't able to be there for me, but at the end of the day, it still hurts. Especially those times where I was in treatment and I was struggling with so many side effects. Treatment can be a roller coaster. Some rounds of chemo could be fine and, you know, you're not very many side effects, and then there could be one round of chemo, or in my case, multiple rounds of chemo, where it just completely wrecks your body. And that is a lot to carry yourself. Feeling like there's not a lot of people there that you can talk to get your mind off of because you don't want to bother people. It's really hard. And I feel like after the cancer treatment is also when I started to feel this really deep sense of loneliness, because it felt almost like when I was diagnosed with cancer. Cancer is that really scary word, and people probably thought I was gonna die. And when I didn't die, where did they go? I have been spending a lot of time by myself. But actually tonight I am going out with some friends, so I do have friends, don't worry. But cancer can be a very isolating experience on its own, going through treatment, especially at a young age when not very many people have experienced it, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. Young people shouldn't have cancer, but in reality there are young people that do have cancer, and it's really hard in that sense to relate to people. And this is a very hard conversation to have, because you don't want people in your life to feel like they didn't do enough or that they hurt you. And like I said before, I understand that people have their own lives, and there's a multitude of reasons why somebody acts the way that they act or doesn't do something that you expected them to. And I understand that, and I've come to terms with that, but it's still hurtful. And I have come to realize that it's more about quality than quantity, and I think this conversation is really important to have, because if you're watching this and you have a loved one that is going through cancer or is a cancer survivor, please know that they still need that check-in every once in a while. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Because I think what a lot of people don't really understand is that side effects from treatment can linger for years to the rest of your life. And also the emotional trauma of going through cancer can still affect people years beyond their treatment. You know, I was just thinking the other day, and it boggles my mind that I know we went through a pandemic and everything, but there are a lot of people that were in my life or are still in my life that never actually saw me in person bald. To me, that was my everyday, that was my constant. And when I say that, I remember in treatment when I was talking to some of my friends on FaceTime. Yes, they saw that glimpse of what going through cancer looked like for maybe an hour of us FaceTiming, but when they hung up the phone, they didn't have to deal with cancer. I couldn't put that pause on dealing with cancer, if that makes sense. Again, it's hard for people to really realize that, especially when they haven't gone through it. So I really encourage anyone who is watching this, like I said, that knows someone that has gone through cancer or is going through cancer, to just check in. Another thing with loneliness, and I think it really pertains to the last 2 years and continuing, at least where I am, but because of the pandemic and all of the restrictions in the hospital, I had to spend a lot of my treatments on my own. Luckily, my mom was able to come to radiation with me, and honestly, I don't know how I would have gotten there without her being there, because at that point I was just so drained. I was going through both chemo and radiation at the same time. I had an infection, and anyways, it was just a big mess. But I went to chemo by myself, and I know most cancer patients went through chemo by themselves and are continuing to go through chemo by themselves. That makes cancer even more isolating, because you don't have somebody with you to see what it's like. A lot of my hospitalizations, I had to be there by myself, unless I fought very, very hard to let my mom be there. But that can also be a really scary experience and a very isolating experience, being in the hospital by yourself. So in saying that, cancer treatment's not only physical, it's also mental. And especially with this past few years with the pandemic and having to do a lot of treatment on your own, that can be very traumatic, especially if during treatment maybe things have not gone the way as planned and you don't have someone there to hold your hand. Also having to worry about getting this virus that could potentially make things a whole lot worse, with my immune system being completely shot, is something that was really scary for me. And I've just recently been able to see more people and be comfortable with seeing more people because I had this huge fear of getting sick and dying. And socialization has actually been very, very good for my mental health. Even working now, being around a few people has been really significant in helping me recover mentally from everything that has happened and to really help with my depression. Even if you don't think someone who is either going through chronic illness or going through cancer might not want to hang out because they're tired, still ask, because it's better to ask them and to make them feel included as opposed to not asking and them feeling isolated. And while we're talking about side effects, let's talk about some of the side effects that I've personally experienced and that I am going through. I'm still struggling a lot with fatigue, and it's very intermittent. And I've struggled with fatigue with my myasthenia gravis. If you're new and you don't know, I do have myasthenia gravis, which is an autoimmune disease, and I've had that since I was 14, and it has to do with muscle weakness. So I've been used to that kind of fatigue, but the chemo fatigue is on like a whole other level. There's a lot of brain fog that I'm dealing with, and I'm trying to improve that, especially going back to school in September. I think I'm going to be doing a medical school prep series on my channel, just to kind of take you behind the scenes of what I'm doing to prep for medical school. And that is including setting up accommodations to make the transition back to school as stress-free as possible. I am planning on taking a reduced course load, which I know will make my 4 years probably turn into 5 years, but I do have a meeting next week to discuss my options, because I think going full-fledged back into school with 12 courses at once is going to be way too much for me. And I've had to come to accept that because my brain is just, I'm smart, but my brain is just still very cloudy, and there's some days where I just feel like I can't think straight. And I think by having that accommodation of a reduced course load and some other things will really help me rest my brain and have the time to complete assignments and study without having to worry that I'm not going to get it all done. That's been something that I think fatigue and especially the brain fog have been the two worst lingering effects of chemotherapy that I have experienced. And like I said, I'm still working on it, and I have that surgery coming up, so there's also a little bit of worry about that surgery and side effects off of that surgery with removing part of my thyroid. But I'm taking it one step at a time, and I think that's all you can do with these lingering side effects of treatment, is you have to take things one step at a time and also use resources. I did finish physiotherapy at the beginning of May, and I was referred into another physio type of program, but it's more individualized and more advanced, I guess. So it's an 8-week program where you see a kinesiologist and they do a physical assessment, and then they basically give you a workout plan, and you do that from home. So I'm excited to start that because I think physio has been very beneficial in terms of helping with the fatigue. Also with cancer treatment, there's a lot of body changes, and for me, before I was diagnosed with cancer, I was eating really well, I was exercising, I was losing weight, and I thought I was the healthiest that I had been. And then I got cancer, and then I went through all of the treatment, and I was fatigued, and there was a while where I wasn't exercising, I wasn't eating the best, because either I had a very low appetite or I just couldn't bring myself to cook anything remotely nutritious because I was just so tired. I had been really hard on myself after I finished chemo to really get things going and to eat healthy and exercise every day and do this, and that. And I was critical on how I was looking and feeling like I let myself go while going through treatment, when I just had to sit back and think, I just went through chemo and radiation. Like, that's pretty phenomenal that I got through that. And the chemo, the first chemo that I was on especially, was a very, very intense regimen of chemo, and that was pretty evident because I couldn't finish the full plan because my body just couldn't handle it. So if my body was reacting so much to that intense treatment, I just need to focus on resting. And rest for me has been really hard to do because I felt like after I was done chemo that I no longer deserved to rest. When I was going through chemo and radiation, I felt like, yes, I'm going through these intense treatments right now. My body needs to rest. I deserve rest. And then after I finished, it was almost like a complete 180 of like, nope, you're done. You no longer have an excuse to rest. But rest is so important, and I kind of wish I could go back to myself a couple months ago and shake myself and say, no, you deserve rest. And I still feel like I have to convince myself some days that it's okay to do nothing and to just lay there. I really hope you got something out of this video, or that you just enjoyed learning something new, or maybe something resonated with you if you're going through cancer or if you're going through a chronic illness. I really hope that this video gives you some hope, or that some of your feelings were validated in some of the discussions that I spoke about. And like I said, some of these topics are really hard to talk about, and I think that's why a lot of people don't talk about them, but I have always wanted to be very honest, very open, and very vulnerable with what I've been through. And actually, I ran into this nursing student at one of the hospitals last week when I was getting blood work, and she actually follows me on Instagram, and she stopped me and she reminded me why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I'm sharing my story, why I'm being so open and vulnerable. And she just thanked me for sharing my story and, like I said, being so open, because she said it's really vital for nurses like me and other healthcare professionals to know these stories and to be able to put faces to some of these illnesses so they can in turn be better healthcare professionals, and that future patients get the treatment that they need. And I just thought that was so sweet that she even said that to me, that she recognized me. So I am going to continue to do what I'm doing. I have some exciting videos coming up. Like I said, I do want to do a series of preparing for medical school, and I will include some of the accommodations in that end of it as well. If you're also going through illness or cancer and you're going back to school and maybe you need some guidance of what to ask for, because it can be a very intimidating and very vulnerable part of school. But I think just being honest with your school of your struggles and your limitations, I think, is only going to benefit you, and it's only going to benefit me by being open with what I need from my school. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. If you did like it, give it a thumbs up, and also don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you're not already, and I will see you in the next video.